bold reforms. One show rises above the spin. Crestline.
If monkey jumps when the tree is now close, the monkey will break legs.
They used 18 members to impeach a governor instead of 22 members.
The political show that dares to go deeper. Crestline brings the voices, the verdicts, and the vision that shapes our future. Join Rayo Akinshowo. Tough questions, real answers, no filters. Crestline, where politics picks.
Everyone, welcome to Crestline, where politics speaks. I'm your host, Rayo Akinshowo. Tonight, we take a deep dive into the heart of Nigeria's diplomacy, its direction, its challenges, and its place in the rapidly changing global order, from global power shifts to regional instability in West Africa. Nigeria's foreign policy and ECOWAS regional influence face new tests. And also today we'll be talking about the Israel and Hamas peace deal, as well as Senator Ted Cruz comment. To help us unpack these pressing issues, I'm joined by Ambassador Seriki Usman, a seasoned diplomat and one of Nigeria's most respected voices in foreign affairs. My guest today is a columnist. He's going to talk about that today. He has retired but not tired. He's still right and all that. And Ambassador, I really want to welcome you to Crestline.
Thank you, Rayo. Thank you for having me on your program.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for honoring my invitation, despite short notice and all that. I'm so delighted that you're here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And then first talking point today we have to talk about the peace deal. Peace deal. And the man of the moment, when we talk about a global scene, is the U.S. President, Donald Trump. And from his word now, from his speech, I have to quote that, "A new and beautiful day is rising, and now the rebuilding begins," said Trump, unquote now. And then that has to be with U.S. President Donald Trump and the leaders of Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey signed a declaration for bringing peace to Gaza as a summit. And I have to ask our guest today, as a diplomat, is that going to be the peace deal between Israel and Hamas, facilitated by President Donald Trump? Is it going to be a lasting solution to that region, talking about Middle East?
Yes. Well, thank you very much for raising this very contemporary, topical, and important question or issue. Well, it's not a peace deal between Israel and Hamas per se. It is between Israel and Palestine, the Palestinian. Let us not reduce the Palestinian self-determination struggle to Hamas only. It goes beyond Hamas. It goes beyond the immediate precinct of the destruction of Gaza. It is the obliteration of the idea of Palestine itself that we are witnessing today. And remember, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there will not be a Palestinian state. So the entire conception of the issue of the peace deal is it directed towards getting a Palestinian state at the end of it all or not? That is the most critical question, the most important question we should ask. So, but to all intents and purposes, there is a peace deal on the ground. There is a ceasefire, cessation of hostilities in Gaza, after nearly 100,000 people have been killed or disappeared under the rubble, and the total obliteration of an entire city, an entire enclave. After 2 years, we now have peace. But like you said, to see if the peace will hold or not actually depends on the guarantors of that peace. Those countries that went to Sharm el-Sheikh to sign the guarantee that the peace will take place. Under what conditions it will be enforced, we don't know. There is the talk of International Stabilization Force, or ISF, from which countries we don't know yet. These are nebulous issues. And then there is the establishment of a higher authority to administer Gaza. But can you administer Gaza, detach it from the rest of the Palestinian territory and administer it? Under what law, under what framework? Remember, the matter has not been discussed in the UN, in the United Nations. There is no Security Council resolution backing this process yet. There is no General Assembly discussion of this matter. It is a unilateral, one-power, uni-power initiative by America to bring about a determined and already predetermined objective of empowering the position of Israel so that whatever remains, whatever happens, the security and the control of Israel on those territories will not be jeopardized.
So you don't see a lasting solution to this crisis?
A lasting solution will come only with the establishment of a viable, contiguous Palestinian state along a negotiated border with the 1967 borders as reference point and the headquarters or capital of that Palestinian state in East Jerusalem. Divorcing the peace talk from those conditions will actually conduce towards more instability, not only between Israel and Palestine, but in the entire region, as we have been witnessing for the last 40 or 50 years. So there must be a comprehensive, holistic solution to the Palestinian crisis, not piecemeal solution based on expediency, such as targeting to obtain the Nobel Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize, for instance, which President Trump missed, and it went to the opposition leader in Venezuela. So I think, we should look at processes that have credibility, like the Oslo process, that actually guaranteed or promised the creation of a Palestinian state as an end result to the peace process. But the Trump peace process is silent on the ultimate objective of creating a Palestinian state. So we have to really brace ourselves for very hard and difficult negotiation. And also the other feature is the putting of pressure on Hamas, as if it is the only agent in the entire struggle. First of all, it has been characterized as a terrorist organization. It should be disarmed and it should be banned from participating in any way, shape or form in the administration of Gaza or Palestine. Now, you entirely remove an entity that is fighting a cause for its people, branding it as terrorists and obliterating it from the scene. How will that lead towards peace? So these are the questions that we need to ask. And without a UN Security Council backing resolution of the peace process, it will be an ad hoc peace process that does not anchor itself on the tenets of international law as provided for by practice and by precedents in the United Nations.
In fact, I just hope there is lasting solution to this. We have Oslo 1, Oslo 2, and yet we don't have a solution to. And let's move on. Let's talk about on our foreign missions now. We've been without ambassadors. Okay, and that led me to Senator Ted Cruz comment. Nigeria is suffering a complex security crisis. Both Republicans in the U.S. are eager to paint them as purely religious. And that's United States Senator Ted Cruz has accused Nigeria's government of enabling a massacre against Christians, citing a rising number of attacks against the community in the country's troubled center. In an ex-post that I was talking about last week, Tuesday, Cruz said 50,000 Christians have been killed since 2009, with 2,000 schools and 18,000 churches destroyed by what he called Islamist armed groups, but he did not cite sources for the information. Cruz, who counts evangelical Christians among his base, has introduced a bill to sanction Nigerian officials whom he accused of ignoring and even facilitating the mass murder of Christians. So what do you have to say? Though we have people condemning his the federal government as well as Christian Association of Nigeria, they've kicked against that. So what's in your own opinion? What's your take?
Well, my own opinion is that this is just a mere diversion from their failure to stop the genocide in Gaza. They supported Israel, hook, line, and sinker. They believed what Netanyahu told them. They supported Israel, and Israel conducted genocide. It is self-evident. It has been declared as genocide by international jurists, by experts. 40 or 50 experts on genocide came together to issue a declaration some months ago that Israel was committing genocide. And Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and others, and top-ranking Western politicians and academics and religious leaders have declared what happened in Gaza as genocide. But the United States establishment, particularly the Republican Party and the Congress, are backing Israel to the hilt. So they need a diversion from this discussion, even internally in America, that is taking place today about the culpability of the American government in the facilitation of genocide in Gaza. So they need to divert attention to another place, and where else will be more convenient than to really look at Nigeria with its internal challenges and problems and the weakness of its communication strategy and the absence of ambassadors. All this coincided at the time to give them the opportunity for them to make this declaration. And you, from what you read, there are no sources to what
Yes, there's no sources, yes.
Where are the 13,000 churches? Where are the 30 or 50,000 people who were killed? In which communities, which states, over what period of time? Let him provide those information, and I'm sure the federal government will look at a dossier if it's provided. Now, I'll just tell you a story. When I was in New York as Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations, I was posted there by His Excellency President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, 2012 to 2016. I served there. And there is a gentleman called Christopher Smith. He was a congressman, Republican congressman, who has visited Nigeria before, and he was championing this idea of Christian massacre, even as far as 2012, 2013, 14. I invited him to my office, and he came to 2nd Avenue, our office, Nigeria House. We had tea together, biscuits, everything, and I enlightened him on the internal dynamics of Nigeria and what was going on, and gave him reports of the International Crisis Group, ICG, on the insecurity and the impact, and actually profiling of the victims of those conflicts. And in the end, he saw that actually those feeding him with information from Nigeria are not actually telling him the truth. So the narrative of Christian genocide actually is emanating from constituencies in Nigeria to be spread outside through social media and through deliberate interaction with American constituencies, particularly the evangelical constituency, the right-wing elements, and the Congress, to sell this idea of genocide in Nigeria for certain reciprocal treatment that they will receive. So it's an internally generated narrative that is being exploited and expanded by foreign entities. And remember, it's not only the United States Congress members who are saying it. Canada, somebody in Canada, a politician, actually, rebounded that story, and it is going around in different circles in Western countries. Now you linked it up to the absence of ambassadors in our missions. Now this is true. If we had ambassadors duly and appropriately accredited and appointed by Mr. President, they will have the authority of the President to approach the Congress or the State Department to elucidate the matter and forthrightly put Nigeria's case at the level of ambassador, interacting with the head of the Africa department or with the Secretary of State himself, or with those people in Congress who are actually advocating the placing of Nigeria on a list of concerned countries. So we have the precedents. Now I'll also tell you that this is not the first time under Trump administration this is taking place. You remember he became president first term in 2016 to 2020. And during those years, President Buhari visited Washington, and he was received, I think, by President Trump. And the same thing happened in his speech during a press conference. President Trump repeated this, that there are attacks on Christians and other things. And the president, Muhammadu Buhari, told him the attacks is indiscriminate, affecting all Nigerians. And it was a concern for the government, for the security forces. So we are not surprised that it is coming up again. Now you will ask me why the timing. I think this is a conjecture on my part. There are certain elements in the United States that are not happy with the foreign policy of His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Since coming to power, he has shown a predilection or preference to engage with France. He has visited that country many times, personally and officially. And he has not gone to the United States for any significant engagement, apart from the appearance in 2023 at the General Assembly. So the U.S. is now seeing a shift in terms of Nigeria's friendship and preference towards France, away from the U.S. And perhaps I'm just making a conjecture, that may inform this antipathy towards this administration by fanning up the embers of discord and religious conflict in our country to discomfiture the president and the government by placing before him this obstacle of facilitating Christian genocide, and also threatening that officials will be held responsible and they will be sanctioned. So whatever big powers do, there are motives behind them. Motives of self-interest, motives of actually advancing certain hidden agendas, and also motives of putting pressure on the target country. And this pressure, actually, they will invoke a congressional directive to the State Department to investigate any country that is allegedly engaged in systematic violation of human rights. And Nigeria is a country of interest. And we have been going through this for a long time. I have submitted memorandum to the Minister of Foreign Affairs when I was in New York, 2014, 2015, when these debates usually came up, telling them that these are routine procedures in the United States, whereby they just look around at the map of the world and pinpoint at a country, whether it's Iran or Nigeria, and say, let us deal with this, let us hit the atmosphere and deal with these countries. And there are really, some internal dynamics that are working. The senators, they need relevance, they need exposure, they need publicity. The State Department needs to really justify to the American people why they should pay so much amounts to the State Department to conduct foreign policy, and they will come back to the American people to say, look, this is what we are doing. Submitting voluminous reports every year on countries of interest who have infringed foreign human rights and other things. And one other element we should not forget is that, we were placed on a certain blacklist by the United States Congress, whereby they could not even supply us with arms during Obama's time and Jonathan's time. It was only when Trump came, in a transactional manner, he agreed to sell us the Tucano, fighters and other
fighter jets.
So it is an element of diplomacy. We need to have ambassadors present. We need to ginger up the Minister of Foreign Affairs in terms of resourcing it adequately to represent Nigeria and giving it the leeway to professionally handle relationship between Nigeria and other countries. And also, I think we have to structure engagement between our president and the presidents of these countries on one-to-one basis, one-on-one basis, in order to actually create empathy not distrust, between them, so that there can be understanding in terms of assessment of events in our country, their outcome, and also how to facilitate mutual coexistence between us and them.
From your insight, it tells that as a country, as a giant of Africa, we have a lot to do. And let's talk about Nigeria's foreign policy and changing world order. Let's start from the big picture. Over the decades, Nigeria has prided itself as, like I said, the giant of Africa, playing leading roles in peace-making, decolonization, and regional diplomacy. But today, many argue that Nigeria's foreign policy lacks direction. In your assessment, has Nigeria lost its diplomatic influence globally?
Well, to say that we have lost diplomatic influence globally is to go over the top. Nigeria is still respected by countries. Nigeria is still held in high esteem. Our leadership is respected and held in high esteem by other leaders. They speak to us, they talk to us, they consult us in many ways. Last year, I think this year in April, there was a meeting in UK. We went there with the foreign department of the Commonwealth and foreign affairs of the United Kingdom and Minister of Foreign Affairs and other agencies. We went and discussed the Sahel with them. And I understand they are coming back to the second leg of the meeting, this month or next month here in Abuja. And we have been invited to go to another foreign country in Europe to engage with them, to explore Nigeria's relationship with that West European country and also the Greater Sahel. We have been engaging with other important countries in Africa and outside. So our foreign policy diplomacy may have slowed down a little, but it's not temporizing. It is really recalibrating. And here the idea of assessment or reassessment comes up. You remember in 2023 when President Tinubu came into office, he enunciated the Renewed Hope Agenda.
Yes.
And under the Renewed Hope Agenda, he had an 8-point program of renewal and rejuvenation of the country. And under that, the Foreign Minister, His Excellency Yusuf Maitama-Tuggar, announced the enunciation of the 4Ds doctrine, which are democracy, development, demography, and diaspora. So those 4 pillars are actually reinvention of the methodologies and reframing of the strategies for engagement with the rest of the world, taking into cognizance the internal dynamics of the country to promote democracy internally and also in our region, and make development as an anchor, a pillar of foreign policy, and also exploit the advantages or liberate the advantages of demography, the size of our population, and the size of our diaspora. So these elements combined together gives us what is now today referred to as strategic autonomy in the conduct of our foreign policy. However, critics are pointing out that our foreign policy is retrenching. That is, we are really drawing back from where we used to be, from the leadership position to followership position. But I think, this may not be entirely true, but it can be visibly demonstrated that, in some aspects we have been preoccupied with different engagements. But I don't agree that we don't have a foreign policy. We do have a foreign policy. It may not be activist, like it used to be during Obasanjo's time, or Murtala Obasanjo, or Obasanjo as civilian president. But it's a carefully calibrated foreign policy. In the absence of ambassadors, the president seems to be conducting his foreign policy. Remember, he has gone to the Middle East a number of times, to Saudi Arabia, to Qatar, and other places. He has been to France a number of times, and the UK. He has been to Brazil recently, and I understand he has been to Japan also. And right now, I think he is either he has gone to Italy or he's about to go to Italy for the Aqaba, dialogue with Italy and in Rome. So these are engagements that demonstrate that Nigeria is still part of the larger world in terms of conduct of foreign policy, but more visibility needs to be given to the country in Africa, first and foremost. Still, Africa is the centerpiece of our foreign policy, and African affairs without Nigeria will not seem credibly being treated or handled globally, especially when we have issues like the reform of the United Nations and membership of Africa in the permanent category of the United Nations Security Council. Also the debates on debt restructuring, debate on climate change and environmental degradation, debate on global security, debate on global trade, especially with the rejuvenation and resurgence of tariff and barriers, and also the tit-for-tat reciprocal treatment of each other between US and China, and also with the conduct of war in Ukraine and in Gaza and other places. More especially our non-visibility in the Sudan conflict has been making people wonder whether we are really interested in Africa or not. Remember in the 80s, we were very much embedded in the conflict in Sudan. We are trying to bring peace, even holding summits, you know, in Nigeria and sending delegations there to mediate. But today it seems the solution to those conflicts have been externalized to Qatar, to US, to Riyadh and other places, and we are nowhere to be seen. So the critics have a point that we need to scale up our visibility in Africa, at least, even if we are not going to be involved in what is going on in the rest of the world. But in Africa, we should be seen to be leading efforts at peace, reconciliation, security, sustainable development, climate change, pandemics, and other things in Africa. That is our natural constituency. That is where we belong to, and we should be seen to be interested in what is going on. The other issue people are pointing out to is that we are not taking the lead in regional integration in Africa. We need to practically demonstrate the viability and utility of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement to see that it has been entrenched and embedded and advanced in its application. Countries like Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, South Africa, Rwanda, and others are leveraging that in order to really bring about closer ties in their economies. They're integrating their region in networks of transportation, rail and road especially. They're expanding their fleets of airlines to really crisscross, you know, the region and the rest of the continent. But where is Nigeria? People are asking, what are we doing? We have been silent on the issue of a continental passport in Africa. You know, that will give us the leverage and leeway to really have sort of a continental citizenship.
So you go beyond ECOWAS and all that.
ECOWAS, exactly. And they are saying with our population and with our dynamism, we should be leading that issue, although it's going to be very difficult and contentious. Where is the issue of monetary union in Africa, customs union, immigration union, all these issues? These are substantive issues under the purview of the African Union that we need to really re-examine and place ourselves at the head of it. And remember in the 80s, we had the Lagos Plan of Action in terms of economic unity of the continent, the industrialization of Africa and so forth. That didn't come to happen, but today we have the Agenda 2063 of the African Union and the Program of Infrastructure Development in Africa, PIDA. Where is Nigeria in terms of the advocacy of those arrangements? And also the APRM, the African Peer Review Mechanism, you know, are we still involved in it or has it gone comatose? And also the NEPAD, the New Partnership for Africa's Development. These are structural institutional organizations that were arrived at by heads of state and government during President Obasanjo's time. Are we still involved in those processes or are we drawing back? And Nigeria, mind you, is the chair or the commissioner for peace and security in the African Union. What are we doing to visibly demonstrate capacity in holding that office? So these are questions that critics are asking, that we should have to step up, you know, our efforts to demonstrate that we are a force to be reckoned with in Africa, not just following things, but actually initiating and dramatically increasing the pace and tempo of implementation of decisions.
I'm so happy because you're well grounded when we talk about diplomacy and international relations. And you've mentioned what the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has done, as well as the efforts the Foreign Minister is making at the moment. And don't you think that our diplomacy is more of reactive rather than strategic?
Well, diplomacy is communication largely. How you communicate your posture, your intentions, and also your relationship with others, how you articulate them. Here, I must also join the critics to say that our communication diplomacy is rather weak. We need to communicate with the Nigerian public more frequently and in a more structured way in terms of what our diplomacy is doing and what it represents. We cannot reduce diplomacy of our country to press statements issued by the presidential press fleet or the presidential press office. Our diplomacy goes beyond those intermittent press statements about Mr. President traveling out of the country, coming back to Abuja, or meeting with other things. The substance of the diplomacy must be actually something that will be conveyed or should be conveyed to the Nigerian public by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, not by the spokesperson of the presidency. And where a spokesperson is needed, it should be the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. If you look at what is happening in countries like China, India, Pakistan, Egypt, is the spokespeople of the ministries of their foreign affairs that convey to their public what their foreign policy or diplomacy entails. Equally so in Nigeria, that's how it should be. I'm not denigrating the role of the presidential spokespeople, but their role is to intimate us with what the president has done, and not actually to give us the substance of the diplomatic overtures or achievements of Nigeria. That is the job of the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So our communication diplomacy needs to be scaled up, needs to be strengthened. The visibility of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs must be noticed, must be appreciated by Nigerians. And here also I have to come back, regrettably, to the lack of appointment of ambassadors. It's 2 years now. I think in October, notices were issued in October 2022, I think, for ambassadors to come back, or 2023, thereabout. 2023, yes. They came back by December, many of them were back in the country. And since then, now getting to 2 years, we don't have ambassadors. Ambassador is the physical embodiment of the president of our country is in another country. And that is why they are given letters of appointment and letters of credence. Yes. And they are also termed as ambassadors extraordinary and plenipotentiary, because they represent and embody the head of state, the executive, the president, if you like, the sovereign of this country. Where they are not appointed and their offices are vacant, we are now conducting diplomacy at the second rung, the second level. And many countries will not accept that. And I think, we need to really be conscious of this, to be aware of this, that it is not the tradition in diplomacy to really have the president of the country represented at levels lower than that of duly appointed and accredited ambassadors and high commissioners. Whatever reason that we may have, we should endeavor at least to have 54 ambassadors and high commissioners in Africa, even if we don't have them anywhere else. And that is a major failing, as far as I'm concerned, of our diplomacy. The absence of physical ambassadorial presence in Africa is a very serious oversight. And I think, it should be corrected immediately. And it's very important because if you don't have ambassadors in Africa, where else will you have them? And what is the use of having a Ministry of Foreign Affairs without ambassadors? This is a contradiction. This is a phenomena that is really tempting and tantalizing at the same time in terms of academic exercise, but practically it impacts on the ability of Nigeria's diplomacy to respond to the changing world. And I think your topic, or our topic of discussion today, is Nigeria in the changing world.
The changing world.
Then how can you actually position yourself in this changing world when you don't have duly accredited representatives at the level of ambassadors? So who are you going to speak with?
Like Ambassador, like I told you before we started, I said I am not going to interrupt you. Why? Because we want to learn from you, want to tap from your knowledge, talking about foreign policy, diplomacy and international relations, and that's why I just have to give you the whole show so that you can do the talking, especially to educate those people who don't know much about foreign, like I do as well. I have to learn also from you as well.
We're all learning.
We're all learning. I must say you are well grounded, and then let's move on. And when you look at emerging powers like China, India, and even Russia expanding their influence in Africa, how should Nigeria reposition itself to remain relevant in this new world order?
Well, I think, recalibration of our foreign policy is highly desirable. I had referred to the renewed hope agenda of Mr. President and the 4Ds, structure or doctrine of strategic autonomy. But we should now take a holistic look at the African scene today. The global dynamics today revolves around two fundamental issues: security and economics, security and trade, security and development. And countries that are external to Africa are interested in Africa insofar as Africa provides for their security and economic well-being. We are the hub of trade in terms of minerals, in terms of buying their produce, and in terms of selling commodities to the rest of the world. You mentioned China, you mentioned Russia, you mentioned many other countries, India. All of them are interested in leveraging the facilities and resources that we have, including Nigeria. India is one of the top trading partners of Nigeria today. So they know what we represent. But does Nigeria appreciate that situation? Now let us take the idea of one of the 4 pillars of the 4Ds, which is development. Can Nigeria develop on its own through its internal dynamics and processes without actually incorporating the rest of Africa in its development? How far can Nigeria's mercantile class, like Dangote or Tedola and others, go if they restrict their operations only inside Nigeria without leveraging the facilities, markets, and resources provided by West African countries and others? Today you have Dangote operating in Cote d'Ivoire, in Benin, in Zambia, in Ethiopia, and many other countries, and Senegal, engaging in legitimate and beneficial economic activities. How has our foreign policy facilitated all other businesses in Nigeria that want to expand outside our territory to other African countries? Remember, we are in competition with other countries. Whatever we do, we are in competition with China. We are in competition with India. We are in competition with Russia, with Turkey, with the EU states. And even other lesser known countries like Mexico and Brazil and others in Africa. All of them are coming here to Africa. So our economic development policy should rest on the tripod of internal harvesting of the resources and advantages that we have, expanding external trade in Africa, and then establishing an international outpost in terms of accessing technology, investment, finance, and opening up markets such as China and India for Nigerian products. And that will require planning, that will require strategizing, and that will require diplomacy. And where diplomacy is weak, planning and strategizing will not work, because you need diplomacy to really create the contacts, the atmosphere for the engagement with this country. Why do you think since 1988 or 89, the foreign minister of China makes it a duty, almost a religious duty, to visit Africa every January, every year? All foreign ministers since 1989 have been visiting Africa as a mandatory step every January to come to 3 or 4 African countries to start the year. Since that time, it is simply because they have strategically recognized the importance of Africa to their well-being. Number one, diplomatic acceptability for China to spread its diplomatic presence, and number two, to access Africa's markets and Africa's resources.
Yes.
So these are things that we should learn also for us
in
to
the
take
next
Africa
2 minutes,
seriously.
Ambassador, if I should allow you, you go on and on and on. And I want also us to talk briefly about, let's come back home. Let's talk briefly about ECOWAS. Let's bring the focus home to West Africa. In recent times, ECOWAS has faced a credibility test. We've seen military coup in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, with some of these countries even withdrawing from ECOWAS. Ambassador, has ECOWAS lost its grip as a unifying regional body?
Well, it has in some way. Number one, it was actually envisaged as an organization that would integrate the region. 15 members initially. Mauritania withdrew, leaving us with 14. And since then, now 3, since 2023, have exited. And that means really the space is being constricted for ECOWAS in terms of the size of the membership. And secondly, ECOWAS has demonstrated that it does not have the capacity to really bring about any dramatic change in the behavior of member states who have decided to defy its protocols on good governance, on elections and democracy. And this is the fundamental issue that Nigeria had with those countries. And to be honest with you, our diplomacy here, or lack of diplomacy, contributed to the perception that Nigeria was one-sided and that we were actually taking the side of Western countries against our neighbors. And that fueled their antipathy towards us. And in return, we could not really articulate our position, the reason why we were insisting that there must be democracy. And I think, we need to recalibrate our diplomacy.
I must say that, Ambassador, we're going to have what we call rematch. It tells you that, of course, this conversation will have to continue. And Ambassador Seriki Usman, a columnist and then a writer, is retired but not tired. Thank you for those insightful perspective. From what we've discussed tonight, it's clear that Nigeria's foreign policy and ECOWAS future are deeply linked, and that leadership, constituency, and vision remain the cornerstones of any meaningful diplomatic revival. And that's our show for today. I'm Brian Akishawa, and this is Crestline, where politics speaks. Join us next time for another thought-provoking conversation that shapes our political landscape. Good night, and keep the conversation alive.
From the corridors of power to the cries on the streets, from broken promises to bold reforms, one show rises above the spin. Crestline.
If monkey jumps when the tree is now closed, the monkey will break legs.
They used 18 members to impeach a governor instead of 22 members.
the political show that dares to go deeper. Crestline brings the voices, the verdicts, and the vision that shapes our future. Join Rayo Akinshowo. Tough questions, real answers, no filters. Crestline, where politics